We're going to get started on our third webinar in the Sustainable Living Through Food series. Like Megan had mentioned, this is post-cooking considerations. I'd also like to thank everyone that Megan had previously mentioned for making this possible, and this is going to wrap up this version of the series, but maybe we can look forward to some more in the future. So I know I've spoken a lot about the pre-cooking preparation and of course the cooking part of it, but now we're going to look at the things that come out of our cooking, our approach to the waste. So the overall theme of this webinar is to take an approach to zero waste. It's a term that is moving forward quickly in sustainability communities, and it's an initiative that starts a good conversation in many communities, including our own. I'm at home today, so I'm going to show you a little bit of how this applies to at home, and of course I'm typically on campus looking at all kinds of sustainability initiatives, and zero waste is one of my focuses. Recently, I've done a training called True Zero Waste Advisor, and I've got the designation as a True Zero Waste Advisor. And what it does, it takes you through the process of what zero waste means to whether it's a large facility or many facilities like within Queen's community, or even at home. It talks about the overall effect on the environment. So ZWIA, or the Zero Waste International Alliance, defines zero waste for pretty much all of the organizations that benchmark each other. And it defines it as the conservation of resources, all resources, through responsible manufacturing, reproduction, production, recovery, and reuse of all materials with no effect, negative effect, to our land, air, water, animal, or human health. So I know it's a long definition, but the important thing is here, no ill effect to human or animal health in our environment. That's the essence of, sustainability. We always try and keep that in mind. So with this post-cooking considerations, we're going to look at that waste that comes out of our actual cooking. In the last webinar, I showed how to do many different dishes with a few ingredients and use up all those peels and ends and things, and even the can that I had mentioned, something that came out of our cooking, how to reuse that in an innovative way. We're also going to talk about the one thing that comes out of most people's cooking, and that's leftovers. We all address leftovers in a different way. Most people know what to do with leftovers, of course. Put it in the fridge and eat it later. Pretty simple. But there are certain situations, and a lot of situations, where those leftovers really aren't getting used, and you want to make a plan to get those used as well. We've made a plan for the organic material that came out of our cooking. We made a plan for the cans, so let's make a plan for the leftovers as well, which is more often what you're going to find coming out of your cooking. So, as it is with a chef at Queen's, which serves thousands of meals per service, at home, it's also difficult to cook for an exact amount of people. If I'm cooking for 5 at home as a chef, I find it just as challenging to get those numbers right on as I would serving for thousands. So I employ a couple of different methods, and we employ different methods at the university. First thing is we look at data. And whether it's personal data of, hey, I know the kids don't enjoy that meal as much, I'm not going to cook as much, or that was a really popular thing last time, let's cook more. The same data is applied to the university. We look at how many people we served last time, well, how popular were those dishes, and how much to prepare for those people. But the important thing is this. We don't cook everything at once and then serve it and then it's all left over as one dish. No. We do a process called batch cooking. Now, batch cooking basically, it just means that you cook some of the prepared stuff first and serve that. And as the consumer, the customer needs, you cook more fresh and serve that, and keep cooking more fresh and keep serving that until everybody is satisfied. Same thing can be done at home. If you know that you've prepared some food already, but maybe the family members or the housemates had a snack a little bit late in the afternoon, they're just not that hungry for dinner. And maybe you're not going to cook all of it. You'll cook what you think you need, and maybe keep a few of those ingredients separate, ready to cook, a la minute, as they say. That last minute of fresh cooking again, and if they enjoy it, they'll like a little bit more. I'm going to use broccoli in many examples today. So let's say I've got broccoli as an ingredient in one of my dishes, and I've got, 5 people to cook for, and I use up most of the broccoli, but I've still got some left over. Well, I put it in my container, put it in the fridge, and save it for later. Already prepared. That's great. You can do the same with pretty much most of the ingredients that you're putting together in any of your dishes. And of course, if you have leftover of the dish yourself, you can just put it into the container, put the lid on, and put that whole soup or casserole or whatever you were cooking, you can put all of that in the fridge. And a good amount of time to store things in the fridge is 3 days. You want to make sure it cools down quickly, put a lid on it, and keep it in that fridge for up to 3 days. Try and use it before. But using that stuff that you've got already prepared is, one, easier, especially if you're not always taking time to prepare food like I am. It's also better on your food budget and will also be better for your next week's plan. So if it's Thursday and you didn't use up all that broccoli, but when you go shopping again on Saturday, you still got some of that broccoli prepared and ready to go for the next cook. So it's going to inevitably lead to less waste because you don't need to buy more product just to have it around. And less waste is what we're aiming for. Also, most people have a good plan with their leftovers to put in the freezer. A lot of people have a big chest freezer. Some people have a small refrigerator freezer. Most people have the opportunity to put things into a deep freeze and store it for a lot longer than that original 3 days. The important thing here is that you keep everything neat and organized. So having those abilities to have many Tupperware containers, maybe you can put a little piece of tape or something on top to label it to say the date that you put it in there. And you want to make sure you're rotating that product through. You want to make sure the areas are clean, neat, and of course, the oldest stuff comes up to the front. You don't just want to keep piling more and more food on top, and the stuff at the bottom is not going to be good when you go back to use it. It's pretty simple. Same thing happens in our refrigerator, and the same thing happens in our storage areas. So be really aware of the organization of it. I'm going to use that broccoli example again, and let's say I did have some broccoli prepared, and I would like to put it in the freezer. Vegetables are always a good idea to cook them first, then cool them down and freeze them. So if you cook them first, once you take them out of that freezer, their integrity will be kept as well as possible. You're going to have a really fresh product coming out if you've already pre-cooked it a little bit. It works with pretty much any vegetable. And it works with a lot of different items as well. There are things that you don't know that you can actually freeze and reuse after. And some items also need a certain way to freeze them, or a certain amount of space in a container, or a certain way that they're going to be best when they come out. Most vegetables, once you've cooked them and frozen them, you can take them out and cook them right away, even from frozen. Other products might take a little bit of time to thaw in order to get the best results from them, like milk or cheese, or even hummus. If I make myself a container of hummus, and in a couple days I don't use it, I put the whole container in the freezer of the hummus, and then take it out when I know I'm going to use it up, and let it thaw in the refrigerator until it's fully thawed, and give it a little mix, and it's almost like it was never frozen. But the good thing here is that you don't have to just rely on me telling you each and every single ingredient. You can also use your technology. So not only using our equipment in the house, like our freezers, or cooking things off ahead of time before you freeze them, or keeping things in a refrigerator for 3 days, you can also use your technology to check and see what products you can freeze, the best ways to freeze them, the best ways to use them afterward. And for the tech savvy person in the house, you can even create your own plans or spreadsheets with all that wonderful stuff in that freezer and organize it however you want. You can also take an inventory. So in the very first webinar, we talked, the first point was about taking an inventory of what you have before you go out and buy more. Same thing will work with your freezer and the refrigerator. If you even just track it and say, I know that on May 14th, I put in this amount of broccoli and I've got it in there and it's cooked and it's delicious, it's ready to use for my soup. Great. I'm going to go through and I've got that inventory. I don't need to go buy that broccoli for that broccoli soup. Again, it's already there. It'll help in that original planning for your weekly meals. It'll help in that moving forward and costing less as well. It'll also help to find what to do with other things you're not really sure about. So at the university, we've got a plan, it's called Lean Path. It's a waste watching system. Basically, it's a data tool that one of its functions is taking the information from all the production waste or things that will go straight to our compost facility from our kitchens and trying to find ways to mitigate that waste. It sounds very complicated, but I'll explain to you how it works. We noticed that maybe broccoli stems hit that that scale, that weigh scale, and hit the camera more often than not. So we make a plan for those broccoli stems to be reused in some way or fashion. Of course, we've got a number of chefs and culinary talents on campus that say, oh yeah, you can do this with it or you can do that with it. But even if you just look up on your home technology to say, what can I do with those things like broccoli stems? You notice it says, hey, I can shred it and make a broccoli coleslaw. I can slice it very thinly, chop it up and put it as an ingredient in a stir fry or some saute with vegetables, or even just put it into my soup stock for added flavor of vegetables. You're not going to keep getting rid of this, and that's one of the things that whether the expanse of a lean path program does, or even just your technology at home, the important thing is that you're tracking what you're doing, and you're using that to its best ability to check more recipes, or even just to see what to do with this stuff when it comes out of the freezer. So lately, there's been an idea of what to do with all the things that you're not going to use because of the COVID-19 pandemic. People are afraid to even venture out to donate and don't really know how to go along with this kind of process. So all the products that we were talking about, these vegetables that might not make it, or things that we have cooked and left over, well, we can still donate those. Now, there's a need in different volumes in every single community. Food insecurity, unfortunately, befalls every community. But everyone can do either a little or as much as they can in order to help out. Whether it's donating something of cooked food to a neighbor who's in need, or if it's taking some things like maybe you got sick and tired of cooking 2 meals of pasta a week and you've gone on to something else, but you've still got some stock of dry pasta or non-perishable items, maybe some beans again. Maybe you've got some things in your fridge that are extra broccoli all that time and you don't think you're going to make it. It's going to make it too long, so you want to get that packaged up and give it to a local need that will use it today or tomorrow. Just like I talked about in our second webinar, we've already disinfected those shopped products before they went into your cupboard. Well, you can easily disinfect them again before you pass them on to our local community need. There is always a need, especially since the COVID shutdown. And a good example of this is at the university. As of March 20th, we went from serving thousands of meals every day down to almost nothing. And now, obviously, food service is not serving anyone on campus at the moment, but there was food there. So Queens generously was able to donate, and with a lot of hard work from a lot of moving people, find a need in the community and get many thousands of dollars worth of food, perishable and non, to the community need immediately. People and locations like Food Bank, Martha's Table, Salvation Army, there's a long list, and they all appreciated any sort of donation. You can donate your time, you still can, even with this, taking into consideration your social distancing policies and of course wearing masks and PPE. You can donate food if you're able to, even if it's a little bit, even if it's a lot. You can also donate money. Once again, look to your local community outreach programs and they'll be happy to steer you in the right way. But I had mentioned neighbors as well. Food insecurity also befalls people in a different sort of way. Not everyone is adept at cooking. Not everyone is adept to really meal planning well. Unfortunately, if you're getting this webinar, you've got some new tips and tricks, I hope, to move forward with your own culinary expertise in cooking sustainably. But many people don't, unfortunately, not until we open up some channels and start sharing with people. So maybe you've got an elderly neighbor down the street and you've got a nice container full of soup that you'd like them to have. One, they're going to like your cooking. Two, they're going to appreciate not having to cook for themselves. And three, they're going to appreciate not having to go out and buy more food. And maybe this is going to be a back and forth situation all of a sudden starts up of exchanging recipes for that type of food. Or maybe they bake and they share it back. So sharing with your neighbors is one of these common themes. I did mention in the last webinar about the soup stock organic material that came out from draining out that stock, that we can always donate that to a local community garden or donate it even to our neighbors for their compost piles. So donating is not out of the question. Of course, be safe, be reasonable within the volunteer protocols, but be understanding that if you do have that overstock and you're really not sure what to do, box it up, and get on over to your local community need and share. So I keep talking about these containers. Not everyone has an unlimited supply of containers. At our house, sometimes we have a lot, sometimes we have very few. It's just one of those things. We share a lot of things with family and friends, and we use a lot in these containers that go in the fridge and containers that go in the freezer. So now I have to start looking at other things I have around the house that can be reusable, that were specifically good for what I need them for. So there's a big difference here between reusable and recyclable. Things that are reusable are specifically designed for reuse. A thing like a glass jar with a lid, specifically designed to put more stuff in, because it's sealable again. You can put nuts and bolts, you can put buttons, you can put soup, you can put soup stock, anything you like. Store it in the refrigerator. Things like these plastic tubs. They are durable, they have a closing lid, and not just this one company uses this one type of material just for that one product. Many companies use this sort of container so that it can be used across many different businesses. Same thing is also for the reuse at home. So if I've got anything to put in the freezer, I can easily put it in here, or I can share this with my neighbors. And it cuts down on having to buy any new ones of these. There are a lot of examples of reusable things. Once again, it's something that's manufactured intended to be used more than once. But you can also look in your recyclables are all around the house. Things that you wouldn't expect to be reusable, maybe you can be creative and make them reusable. So I'm going to ask my young children to come in once again. They were here last time. This is DM, she's my eldest. And of course, Romy's on her way. And they're going to show, once again, something that can help out with keeping kids busy, interested, and opening up a conversation about reusables and being more sustainable at home. So if you guys want to sit down, I'm going to just explain what you're doing. So what they're doing today is they're making reusable bags from old t-shirts. This is something that we've done in the past. It's a good, can you put this down? It's a good way to, one, find a use for those old t-shirts. Two, make yourself something that is strong, long-lasting, and constantly reusable, as well as washable, especially with viruses and bacteria and things. You want to wash as much as you possibly can. So what they did simply was they cut the sleeves, the short sleeves, out of the sides. They cut a hole into the neckline, and they tasseled the bottom. There's many, many tassels. And I'm going to get them to get started on that one. I'm going to show you the end result. So this is the end result. This is one of our reusable bags. And the end result is this. It actually didn't involve any sewing whatsoever. So those of us that don't sew very well can also keep the kids at a craft or something, making for a little bit of time and still have fun. You can either keep it as a regular reusable bag, or you can keep those tassels as a very fashionable reusable bag. And trust me, you'll get a lot of comments if you do this this way when you go to reuse your bags. Either way, we're finding something around the house that we can easily make into reusable. It also spawns more conversation about being innovative about those little things that you find around the house, like the scraps that we cut off of the t-shirt. These can easily be used for cloths or for more art projects later. One of the things that they've done with the sleeves themselves, it was quite innovative. These are the sleeves, and they've now made them, and damn if I can show, into hair scrunchies. Now, I've mentioned this before to some people and got a good laugh. So back when I was younger, scrunchies were all the hair accessory rage, and yes, they are coming back. And now you can make your own out of an old sleeve of a t-shirt, just a piece of scrap that you find around the house. So as they work on this, keeps them busy as they knot those tassels together and make a seal across the bottom of the bag. I'm going to talk about other things that in our waste stream, in our recyclables, we can now make into reusables and get more uses out of as much as we can. Remember, our ultimate goal is to cut down on the waste that comes out as little as possible. And that's the zero waste approach. So we're going to be trying to be creative a little bit with some things around the house. So what I've got here, and I hope you can all see it, and it's got a little bit darker out there, but we've got one of these clamshell containers that's got holes on top and holes in the bottom, specifically designed for strawberries. Matter of fact, It's got a little strawberry thing on it. And these are specifically designed by the manufacturer to put strawberries in, go home with, put it in your fridge, and when you're done, you recycle it. Well, you don't have to do that. You can definitely use this for many other things. For example, if you buy bulk fruit, like grapes, strawberries, things that you'd like to store, kiwi, you can definitely use this again for rinsing those and storing them in your fridge again. If you buy bulk anything, you can put it in here, put it in there to store. And they're good for rinsing because it's got all the holes. A colleague the other day just mentioned that you can also use these to sprout your seeds. Because of the clamshell and the holes, it's got some breathing, but it also acts sort of as a greenhouse, I think she was telling me. So it's a little miniature greenhouse for sprouting seeds. That was a great idea. Some people also use this just to store little bits of crafts and things for another usage later on. One more thing I've seen people do is attach it to the edge of their wooden box gardens so that it rattles a little bit in the wind and deters any animals from digging up your garden. Another thing that I'd like to talk about are these single-use plastic bags. Now, of course, we're making our own reusable bags, but as we have discussed in our shopping habits lately with COVID-19, these have become more prevalent because we can't always take our reusables into the store. So these have become more prevalent. Well, quite simply, it's a small plastic bag. Some people can use this for cleaning up undesirable things in their backyard, or maybe covering one of those plants that is a little bit more delicate and needs a little bit more shelter out there in the meantime while it starts to grow. Or do like I do and put your trim waste that you're going to put in your soup stock into that bag, fill it right up, put that in the freezer as one of your storage containers. You don't always have to put everything in these containers. You can even label one of these, and you can store that in there. In the last few minutes, the young girls have finished up a wonderful compostable bag. Thank you very much. What a great job. And really didn't take long, and it kept them interested. And we've now got a durable, long-lasting compostable, reusable bag. Give me 5. Thanks, kiddos. So moving right along, cardboard. Right now, many people get things delivered to their house. And yes, I know in the last couple of webinars I've talked about buying local, and local producers will often put, a number of potatoes and squash and things in a box, and they'll deliver to your house. Or you can go pick it up. Either way, you're going to have more cardboard around than previously. So one of the things that I do with my cardboard is I cut it into sections and I put it underneath my wooden box gardens in the spring. I put it all the way at the bottom of the soil so that way it'll deter some weeds from growing up through that soil into my garden and take the water that's specifically for the vegetables away to the weeds. Also, over a short period of time, this starts to break down and become part of the soil. So I'm constantly going to be replenishing the bottom of those box gardens. Quite simply, you can also use this as a fire starter for a fireplace in the winter, or even a fire starter for a campfire in the summer. So many uses for cardboard, as well as crafting. And now I'd like to get into one of these containers. Once again, specifically designed just to be used, a one and done sort of operation. However, you can still use this. This actually has no holes in it. Great for storing things. It's got a closable lid. It's also a cool little way to share things with your neighbor. So because something like this can easily be left on a back porch or something for someone to pick up, often what we'll do is grow some vegetables, wash them up, put them in this container, seal it, and leave it there for my neighbor to pick up from their porch. And they'll pick it up, do the same thing. Maybe they've got some vegetables to share or some items to share with the kids' crafts and stuff. And they'll put it in here, pass it back along the porch through the fence, and this now becomes a reused many times item, as opposed to a just plain recycled item. So there we have the difference between reuse and recycle. The items that are manufactured for reusing are always great to use, but those other products that are manufactured that will be expected to be recycled, we try and reuse those as well, getting that final stage down to a minimum. with that zero waste approach, this last reduce, reuse, and the last point is recycle, that needs to be as little impactful as possible, because that's the part that directly impacts, of course, our environment. So we talked about reusing. Our recyclables, obviously, we're trying to get down, but another major method on how to get that recycling area down is the reduced part in the first place. So this reduced part in the first place usually comes up with two plans. You start with, what do I have? What can I reuse? Okay, now what do I have left over? What's my actual downstream waste? And then you go back and you go to the beginning and say, okay, what can I avoid to buy next time? Or what is the right container to buy things in, or no container at all, ideally? And that's your upstream. So I'm going to give a good example of this clamshell container that strawberries come in. If you are going to go to the grocery store and constantly buy these containers, you're going to have a lot of them very quickly. If you like strawberries, you're going to continue buying these. However, if you were to buy bulk and use the one that you've got, you're not going to buy any more of these. Or maybe you buy them from the market and they use the old pint containers that are this material, the same as an egg carton, that pulped compostable paper, and they serve the strawberries in those by buying local. Well, you're not going to be buying these clamshell things anymore. And the less of these that are purchased, the less you're going to go into your waste stream. And more people start taking note, saying, well, I'm not going to buy them either. Then that's going to have a direct effect on the manufacturing end of it. And remember, consumer is, of course, king when it comes to manufacturing. The consumer habits dictate what is being manufactured on the front end. I know we always talk about making a big difference, getting at those manufacturers to be more responsible, but we can do that just by our actions, by being more sustainable at home. Being more sustainable at home means that you're going to inevitably affect how things are produced at the beginning because of examples like this. The companies will notice that they aren't selling their strawberries, plain and simple. The other people that have sustainable packaging or no packaging at all are selling all their strawberries, and you're sitting on all these strawberries that are not selling because of this. Companies will do their market research and they're going to come along and they're going to say, yep, I've got all these strawberries, what's the problem? I've got to change my habits. I'm going to pass that information to other manufacturers to say, I'm noticing that I'm making more money again by being more sustainably responsible. And that's the overall cycle of zero waste. We've gone from a zero waste approach to a zero waste cycle. You've just completed a loop there. By eliminating as much recyclable material as possible, we're not putting a strain on our recycling system. Matter of fact, we're helping that out for the redesign in manufacturing and helping us with not having an inundated amount of things to find and reuse and having just that right amount of clothing to make into bags or cardboard to use for our box gardens or even plants to share with our neighbors. I know I've talked a lot about tips and tricks and things, but I really hope that some of these can be shared between yourselves and with other friends and neighbors. I hope the sustainable conversation continues long after this webinar is over, and I hope to see you all again soon. I'd like to thank once again everyone who has come together to make this happen, and I'd like to thank you all for attending. Have a nice afternoon.